Alright, so before we get too far into the video, just want to take a quick moment to thank everyone that helped me hit 200 subscribers. Greatly appreciate all of you. God bless you all, and that made me really happy to wake up today. Well, when I'm filming this, today being Saturday morning, and that was a really cool thing to wake up to. So thank you all again for that. But now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to get into today's discussion, which, as you can tell by the title of the video, is going to be: is gaming about to get too expensive? Is it already too expensive? And are people gonna pull back from this hobby, and that just due to not being able to afford it? So about a week ago, we already discussed the fact that Nintendo had a little bit of controversy in that, with the fact that their games were going to be starting at around $80 to $90, along with a lot of people just genuinely unhappy with the price of the Switch 2 console. We did also see that Nintendo did stick to their ground. It sounds like that's pretty much all but confirmed that those prices are going to be sticking around in that. And as you would imagine, a lot of people, including myself, we're not happy to hear that. But honestly, I kind of feel that this is something that's been a little bit of a long time coming in that. So it really wasn't all that long ago that it felt like the standard price of games went up $10 from $60 to $70. Keep in mind, I'm just doing everything in USD since that's primarily what I work with in that. So it might vary depending on the country that you're in that. But at least for us here in the States, it's gone up pretty much $10 in that, I would say, across the board. There are still some games that do release for right around 60 in that, but that's becoming increasingly more rare. Overall, the new price seems to be 70, and despite the price of games going up $10 in that, we're still seeing a lot of in-game transactions. The free-to-play model is still incredibly popular because it incentivizes people in that to spend absurd amounts of money in that. Within in-game stores, I just recently talked about Halo Infinite and how their prices of their store have even gone up to the point of where, hey, if you just wanted 3 armor sets in that, you were going to be spending $40, which was only $20 off of what the game initially launched at, being $60. So that's kind of my question in that is, are you going to be kind of sticking around with gaming, or do you feel that you're going to be dialing it back? Is it something that you might just cancel some of your other hobbies or tone them down to make room for gaming? Just kind of want to get a consensus from what everybody's feeling in that. So I know for myself, personally, even though I'm upset with the change, is it going to affect me a whole lot? No. Let me explain why. And again, let me preface that I'm not happy with the price changes and that. But essentially, I'm kind of a person that whenever I buy a game, I'm pretty content with like one game at a time. And even then, I'll play that game to death. Most of the time, if I'm buying a new game, it's usually because it's something to play with my friends, or it's something that I'm just genuinely super interested in. I think honestly the last game, at least the last full price game that I bought in that was Space Marine 2, and that dropped in September. And honestly, I haven't really bought anything since, and that's kind of typical for me. The other thing that I will preface is, do I have the buying power in that where if I wanted more, I could buy more? Absolutely. My wife and I, we do pretty decent for ourselves. We're not walking around in Gucci, Louis, or Prada or anything like that, but all of our bills are paid in that. We're definitely not struggling to make ends meet. We're able to live relatively comfortably and all that. But I know that's not true for everyone else in that, especially currently in that, it is rough out there, not just in the U.S., but in a lot of other countries as well. And I feel like with the price of gaming going up and that, people are going to have to make a choice, and that's going to be, do they want to continue their hobby, or do they have to drop it? And I'll be honest, I think that's something that I don't want to see, is people drop the hobby in that, or even give up on it. At least for me personally, Gaming, it's a huge stress relief. It's something that honestly it keeps me mentally well. You know, it's a nice way to unwind in that, and I know for a lot of other people it's the exact same thing in that. And with everything going up in cost in the world and that, you know, I understand that families might not be able to justify, you know, for their child and that going out and spending an additional $20 on maybe the new Mario Kart. On top of that as well, one of the other things I'm kind of worried about Nintendo doing is the whole idea of, even if you buy the physical copy of a game in that, you still have to get online to download it. Again, I know it may sound crazy to say in that, but there still are parts of the world in that, even here in the US, some of, you know, the more developed countries in that, where internet isn't always available. And I don't like the idea that, you know, people are going to be locked out of being able to have fun essentially in that, just because, hey, maybe they live in an area in that just doesn't have those same opportunities. But yeah, just kind of curious to hear from you all what your thoughts and opinions are. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be one of those situations where it might only get worse before it gets better in that, especially with Nintendo kind of being one of the bigger companies who start this up. Nintendo does have like a cult following, and I shouldn't even say cult following, but they do have a lot of mass appeal in that, and for fair reason. Like, they do have some pretty good IPs. Like, I mean, I grew up on a lot of the Mario, Pokemon, Donkey Kong, Zelda, like all that stuff, and a lot of those games that are releasing currently, they are pretty good in that. But like again, because it is Nintendo and that, and they have that power, there is a big part of me that worries if other companies and that will kind of follow suit. And, you know, if Nintendo's able to do it, they may say, hey, why don't we just jack our prices up in that? And that's my big fear, is just kind of overall seeing prices go up in that for companies just to essentially try and make a quick buck here and there. Now, I will say, I guess maybe to play devil's advocate, I do understand that costs rising don't just affect us as consumers. I also understand that it does affect businesses as well, and unfortunately, sometimes that does naturally lead to things going up in price and that, you know, companies are having to sink more money into games, they're having to pay their employees more, and yeah, you are going to see sometimes, you know, those enhanced costs and that lead to a higher price in games, which I think that is a fair thing, and that's probably been the one big thing that I've heard a lot of people kind of throw out in defense of some of this stuff. But again, it's not even for me just the regular price of games and that. But yeah, it's also the fact too that it's affecting microtransactions as well. You know, they were already bad before when they first came out, but at one point it did kind of feel that to an extent they were, I don't want to say fair and balanced, but they weren't as bad as what they've gotten to. You know, I never expected kind of things to hit a point in that where you could genuinely spend like 2/3 of an original game's price in that just on, you know, like a couple armor sets. Especially, you know, I know I'm kind of throwing Halo under the bus with that, but it's not just Halo, it's also Call of Duty. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, that unlocking different skins, things like that, that was something that for the longest time that I remember, you just earned from playing the game. Granted, it is cool that, you know, you're not just locked behind the base content of games anymore. Stuff can be added, but at the same time, I'm sorry, I just don't think that, you know, I just don't think a skin in that should be the equivalent of 1/3 of the price of something. And again, you know, I see it in Halo, I see it in Call of Duty, or at least I hear it from my friends in that prices are going up, things along that end. And it has me a little bit worried. The other thing I would throw out too is just keep in mind the initial price of some of the Xbox and the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 whenever they first released, and that those prices were extremely high. And I would imagine too that, you know, the price of probably the next consoles isn't going to be much nicer on us, if nicer at all. But yeah, just let me kind of know your thoughts and opinions. Again, me personally, I don't want to sound like a doom and gloomer, but I do think it is going to be one of those things that, yes, I think it probably at most is going to get worse before it gets better. But I think that's the important thing to keep in mind, is I do think there is a getting better. You know, you can only bleed people dry so far before you start to have residual negative effects from it, and I do think that stuff will eventually hit. And honestly, I think the environment's right for that to happen. Again, you know, it's already a hard time economically for a lot of people in that. A lot of people have already been complaining about the increased price to, well, pretty much everything, but also gaming as well in that. So I think the whole idea that Nintendo kind of dropped the ball like they did, it might just be the kick in the ass the industry needs to maybe get back on track. But again, that's just my thoughts and opinions on it. Let me hear yours down in the comments, all that other fun stuff in that. Also, the Space Marine 2 update is going to be out this coming week here in that, so we are going to be going through, reviewing that, doing a breakdown of the new campaign mission. Unfortunately, due to my own personal work schedule, I'll definitely record it Tuesday, but probably not going to be able to get it out, though, until Wednesday afternoon. But it is what it is. We still will get it out. I guess the good news will be is hopefully that would give you all some time to get out there and enjoy it yourself. But as always, thank you for watching. Again, greatly appreciate you all, and we will catch you next time.